Welcome to Beyond the Coverage. I'm Chris Horner, and this is Bahrain Victorious Tour de France 2021 breakdown. Now, Bahrain Victorious have looked spectacular throughout this 2021 season, and if they were any better, we would be comparing them to Ineos, Jumbo-Visma, and Deceuninck Quick-Step. They would be considered one of those monster big teams that no matter what race they go into, they can win. Now, they haven't exactly been dominating the general classification, but they've always been up there. Giro d'Italia, Damiano Caruso, second on general classification, put in a fabulous ride, even dropping Egan Bernal there on the final mountain stages to try to gain back some time. Dauphiné, Jack Haig, riding fantastic, finishes fifth on general classification if I remember correctly. And Sonny Colbrelli winning stages. 3 times second there, Dauphiné. If he had a little bit stronger team, maybe some of the guys from the Giro d'Italia, he might have had 4 stage wins at Dauphiné. Instead, he walked away with 1 very impressive and 3 second places. That's not a bad tally for a team that's not considered to be one of the big juggernauts out there in the World Tour cycling racing. So, the big news, though, when you look at the roster of 8, Marc Padun is not here. Now, when he won 2 stages at Dauphiné, when he dropped the best riders in the world that were racing at Dauphiné, getting prepared for the Tour de France, we're talking Richie Porte, Garrett Thomas, Theo Gegenhardt. Those are the 3 juggernauts, 3 leaders going into this Tour de France, only missing Richard Carapaz from Team Ineos. And Marc Padun was dropping everybody. Now, I'm doing Tour de France with NBC, so we get to interview all the directors. Well, we try to interview most of them anyways. But one of them, Ralph Aldag, the director here at Bahrain Victorious, he told us they're leaving Marc Padun off the list. When I'm shooting this video a day before it's released, he's off the list. And in my mind, I don't agree with the tactic. I understand why. And what he told us is that he's a young kid. He doesn't want to throw Marc into the Tour de France and everyone throwing all this pressure on the young kid to win the Tour de France or to go podium, top 5 or top 10, whatever it may be. What I believe and what I'm saying here on Beyond the Coverage is you got to bring him, okay? When a kid is riding that spectacular, when you're young, your form fluctuates all over the place. It's hard to find good form. Sometimes it appears, and you don't even know why it appeared. You know, you're not even 25 years old yet. The form's all over the place. You haven't figured out how to train right. We already know he hasn't figured out how to diet right. He talked about that on his first win, summit win at Dauphiné, about how difficult he had had with eating, diet, and controlling his weight. So we know there's those problems with young kids. That's why I'm saying when the form is good, when you're hot, when you're just smoking on form like we saw at the Dauphiné from Marc, you got to bring him to the Tour de France because that drop in form might be coming. You want to get him to the Tour de France. If I was Marc Padun's father, if I was one of his parents, if I was his best friend, I'd say, dude, make him take you to the Tour de France. You got good form. You go to the Tour de France and win a stage, you're a star. You go to the Tour de France and win the Tour de France, it's blow your whole contract up. You get a massive raise. Everything's fantastic. If you go to the Tour de France and you drop and don't finish the Tour de France, nobody's going to care. They're just going to say, hey, you're a young kid. Is there going to be some pressure on you when you get there? Would Marc Padun have a lot of interviews to do, some stress? Of course. But that's what Ralph Aldag, the DS, has to control. He has to be able to bring his riders in, especially young riders. You have to bring young riders in, and the team has to know how to control their energy when they're off the bike. Not only does a DS control riders when you're in the race, but a good DS, a good team manager, a good press director of the team, they understand, they should understand. They don't always understand. They should understand that you can't be doing interviews 24/7. That you can't finish a 100-mile bike ride and then come back and do 2 hours of interviews. Now, I've been on teams where they've pulled me too many different directions. I was trying to train hard. I was trying to do every interview I could. I was trying to do appearances left and right, and then I just blew up at those races. So a good team has to control that. When Ralph Aldag told me, hey, he doesn't want that pressure on his shoulders, I can understand that. But I also know that he's at the peak of his form, and if you go there and you win a stage, your contracts, you got a golden contract set up for the next 2, 3, 4-year deal with Bahrain Victorious. If you go there and you ride top 10 general classification, it's going to be an amazing result. And for years to come, they will talk about how you're going to be the next possible Grand Tour winner at the Tour de France. I'll take TJ Van Gardner. He went young to the Tour de France. He got 5th, wore the white leaders jersey there for the young jersey. From that moment on, his contract was spectacular, and he was talked about being the next Tour de France winner. Okay, it never materialized. Now he's retiring and he's leaving the sport. But that pay and salary, that one good year at the Tour de France had set him up for life financially, and now allowed him to just ride his bike and not stress and worry about money. So for Mark Padun, if he went there and did the Tour de France and you ride good, bam, you're set for life. If you ride bad, no problem, man. You're a young kid. It was no big deal. It's not, no one's going to think that you won 2 stages back-to-back at Dauphiné was a fluke. Now let's get on with the other riders, because that's my take there on Mark Padun. He should be here 100% in my mind, no doubt about it. The kid is flying. I was sad to see him left off the list. Now other guys they got on the team, Jack Haig, riding fabulous. He's going top 10 at just about every week-long stage race there has been for the last year or two. This year, spectacular. Like I said, 5th at Dauphiné. And talking to Ralph Aldag at Dauphiné, he's holding a little something back so that he can save a little form for the Tour de France. And with Mark Padun already up the road, it kind of put the shackles on around the wrist there, so he couldn't really open up the legs. So Jack Haig looks fabulous. Seen him riding on stages for Sony Cabrelli and riding the front, just last guy left for Bahrain Victorious, leading out Sony Cabrelli. Couldn't quite get the job done, but the amount of work that boy did on those stages was absolutely phenomenal. So he's a good rider. So keep an eye out and let's see if Jack Haig can get in the top 10 on general classification here at the Tour de France. Pello Bilbao, another great rider. He's been top 10 in Grand Tours already. Coming here, I would imagine a little fatigued from doing Giro d'Italia. So we'll have to see where his form is. Wout Poels used to be a Sky member. Remember? He was the last guy riding there for Chris Froome and Geraint Thomas and saving Tour de France and helping Tour de France wins. Wout Poels can ride the bike. We haven't seen quite that spectacular form as Sky. He's been on and off, so I don't expect him to be riding for general classification. Probably looking to hunt stage wins. And Sony Cabrelli, of course, after seeing his spectacular form there at Dauphiné, he's sprinting fabulous and he's getting over the climbs. On the flat stage, I'll be curious to see if he can take on the big sprinters, Wout van Aert, Mathieu van der Poel, and of course Caleb Ewan. That's a tall order. But if there's a little bit of some bumps in the stages, we could possibly see Sony Cabrelli here on maybe stage 2 do something and be up there at the front fighting for a stage win on stage 2. Clearly he's on form, and I would not be surprised if he takes 1 or 2 stages here at the Tour de France. Bahrain Victorious, again, they are just looking phenomenal all year, and there's no reason to think at the 2021 Tour de France this year that these guys can't win something, if not multiple stages here at the Tour de France and get somebody in the top 10. Hope you guys like my take on Bahrain Victorious, and I'll see you guys on the butterfly effect real soon.